the recording. Good morning again. Hopefully everyone can see my screen okay. I have the agenda up, and I have added a couple of items, which I obviously can't type this morning. And I can't spell either. That were mentioned to me in the last day or two. We'll get to additional items if anybody has in just a moment. I wanted to note that Lori has volunteered to be the recorder this year. So I want to say thank you to her publicly. It's a big job. And I also want to say welcome to John. He is our new library system specialist, and he's with us this morning. So glad to have you with us.
I appreciate it. So thank you.
Okay, additional agenda items. Someone asked me to add the Sage Series source hierarchy to the list. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a little while, and also a reminder. Did anybody else have any other items they wanted to add to the agenda today? Hearing nothing, we'll move forward. Meeting minutes. I never received the April 3rd ones. I just realized a few minutes ago. Beth, I don't know if you ever got a chance to get those finished.
I did them this morning because I realized that they weren't done. And so I don't know, we
can just wait till next meeting.
I could share my screen and people could read it, but that's, I know, a little problematic. But anyway, they are done at this point, so it's just a matter of procedure.
We'll get them circulated following the meeting, and then we can approve them at the next meeting. Thanks for taking care of those.
You're welcome.
And the August 7th minutes were sent out and posted. Okay. Sent out and posted on the website. So hopefully everyone has had a chance to look at those. Is there any questions or comments anyone needed to make regarding those, or does anyone want to make a motion to accept them?
This is Catherine Wicken Pendleton. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting.
And I just see that Barbara added a second. So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, sounds like they are passed. Thank you, Lori, for taking care of those. So the next item on the agenda is election of chair. October always comes around when we try to shift the responsibilities for the chair of the committee. And it's October again. So I mentioned this at the last mentor meeting, that if no one was interested in serving in this capacity, that I could continue for one more year. But any feedback, any nominations? Oh, it is so quiet.
Dia, you know darn well that's why I offered to do the minutes.
I know. I figured that out this morning. You're using my old trick.
Yeah, but thank you, Dia. I think under 1 degree or 2 degrees, you have to remain where you are. It would be nice if somebody would step up and be like, sort of like a co-chair or something with the chair in training, because it takes a little getting ready to carry it on next year. So anybody interested in advancing gradually?
Whenever you want a meeting to be very, very quiet, this is one of those times, right? Not that we want it, but that's what's going to happen.
That's true. And I guess folks in attendance at the meeting can think about it, and if they want to volunteer to be a co-chair, maybe they can email you.
Okay. Alrighty. So next item on the agenda is new cataloging mentor. I just wanted to announce, some of you may not be aware that Sarah Samuels lost her job in Hood River due to budget cuts in the summer. And so we have lost her as a mentor. However, we would like to welcome Anna Lim, who is also from Hood River and has trained under Sarah. And she has agreed, along with her director, to let her serve as a mentor. And so we want to welcome her and let everyone in the cataloging community know that she is now one of our mentors. We're going to be starting to really work to get her up to speed on where, you know, things have been in terms of discussion, and just so that her knowledge base is a little bit fuller for SAGE. And so just wanted to make that announcement. Graphic novels and manga series. I kind of broadened what it says here to kind of include graphic novels as well. We're revisiting this topic. Somehow kind of got dropped between about June and October of 2006, and so we weren't sure if it had been communicated very clearly. As the mentors discussed it in the last meeting, we felt like we needed to just put it on the agenda and put a kind of a reminder out there if you already were aware of this, but if you weren't, to put the information out there. The question in reference to this is whether or not you need to add a 490 and 8XX field when a 245 subfield A contains that series name. The consensus of the mentors and their memory of this discussion was that it was okay to add those fields, but not necessary. We want to mention, however, that if a library wants to add a 490 and 8XX field to a record like this, that they do need to be willing to clean up the whole series. So we don't want to have, you know, hit and miss within a series of having a 498XX that's adding the same information that's in the 245 subfield A. Does that make sense? Thanks for your confirmation, Tracy and Barb. Just want to make sure that I explained that properly. Is there any questions about that?
So I have a question. This is Anna. So what if we find errors in or discrepancies in that information if we are trying to clean up and add and include that?
So can you expand on what you mean by discrepancies or errors?
Oh, what if we find different series information for different records where then it doesn't quite match up, right, in terms of the numbering? And should we just be consulting Fantastic Fiction and use that as the main source, or I don't know, or talk to others?
Okay, we're going to come back to this one in just a little bit as part of the one that I added in terms of that. And if we have more questions following that, Anna, would you bring them up then?
Okay, thanks.
Uh-huh.
I would like to just interject briefly, and that's that I think the main goal as catalogers, and especially in a consortium, we really need to strive for more consistency. And that should always be your goal. So, yeah, whatever you're going to do, if you're adding or if you're cleaning up, just make sure you're being consistent. If you go back and look at like a series title in our OPAC and then scope it under the fields on the left-hand side, you will find like variations in series titles being used, up to 10, 12 different little silly variations for the same series. And it might be even using the same series basic title and everything, like Virgil Cole and Everett Hitch. I found 9 different variations on that series this morning. So make sure you're being consistent and make sure you go to the authorities. And yes, that will come up later. But to answer your question, Anna, just do make sure that if you're cleaning up, you look for consistency in all the records on Sage. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
Joyce, you sent a message in chat asking if you can clean up files if you're not a Cat 1. By this, what we mean is if you're adding that 490 and 8XX, if you're adding it to one item in a series and there are other items in the series in Sage, then you need to go into those other records and add that series information in the 490 and 8XX field so there's consistency. We're not talking about a lot of cleanup. It's just that matter of adding those fields.
And adding a series entry is okay as a Cat 2 level cataloger.
Is that helpful, Joyce? Okay. Any other discussion or comments about this particular? We just want to make sure that the word did get out across. And so okay, next item has to do with duplicates. We've talked about duplicates a bit. We're still seeing, the mentors, are still seeing duplicates being added pretty regularly. And so we're not exactly sure always. I mean, we cannot track and trace why they're being added, why we're getting duplicates added to the system particularly. But some of the things that we want to remind you is things that can cause duplicates to occur is if you are scoped just to your library when you're searching for records in the system, you're not going to see necessarily all of the items that are available, all the bibs that are available, unless your library already has a holding there. So be sure that you are searching all of Sage and not just a portion, either your library or your group in your area or however you might have it set. Be sure that you have it set to all of Sage when you're searching. And if you're in the Z39.50 portal, be sure you do not have the radio button next to local catalog checked. Because if you do have that selected, what's going to happen is you're going to see a copy of everything that's in the system. And you may find that that's a better record than some of the others and not realize it's coming out of the Evergreen Sage system. And you may be creating another duplicate. So just something to be aware of. And if you have questions as to adding a duplicate, check with one of the mentors. we'd be happy to help you walk through, determining that.
One other, what I believe is a key reason that this happens, especially on reprints and things, is only relying on your ISBN search. Make sure you can start with your ISBN to find records on our system, but before you go outside of our system to import another record, make sure you do a couple variations of keyword searches, because I think a lot of duplicates do get added. You might have a paperback copy of a record that under our relaxed standards, you certainly can attach to a bib if it's close enough. And so go back and review those if you're not sure, or contact us. But I think a lot of times people only search ISBN. And sometimes the system had not even been identifying those types of searches. I think Beth has that cleared up. I haven't noticed it for a couple of weeks. But just make sure you go beyond ISBN.
And double check what you've entered too. I have noticed sometimes, depending on what I'm putting in, and I don't start with an ISBN search. Sometimes I find I don't get a record and I think this is really strange. And I look and I've typed something wrong. So sometimes our little search box only gives us so much to visualize. We have to scroll back and look. So it's always good to use at least 2 search methods if you don't find something. And that's something we've prompted for.
I was also wondering how many of you catalogers import records from vendors? Do any of you use that as an option? Because those rely heavily on ISBN match, and I think we're getting duplicates from vendor records. Does anyone use the vendor bib records just automatically with an order? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of no's under the chat box. Haven't seen a yes yet, but some of the records I've looked at look like they came directly from a couple of the vendors.
Yeah, I'm thinking that those vendor records are coming through Z39.50 import.
I think so too. Because I do see occasionally what looks like it could be a very brief vendor record.
Yeah, I've seen those as well. And that'll come into our next discussion.
Yes, it will.
Just the quality of records. Yeah, it's a good segue.
So, moving to that topic, really what we want to do is remind folks here that there is no consistency in records that you'll find either in OCLC, CAT Express, or in Z39.50. Or as someone said, and I think it was Beth said, not all records are created equal. So please be sure to check the quality of the records you're bringing in. Always look through the records if you're importing, and it doesn't matter whether you're importing from Z39.50 or OCLC. We can find some very ugly little records that come in. So just be sure you look for the best record available. And then another piece of this was a checklist of fields to see in each record, and Carmen was going to do that, but I don't see her here today.
Oh, rats.
Yeah, rats is right, because I'm not sure exactly what she had in mind here. She was going to take care of this. So, I hate to do this from the seat of the pants.
Well, what we could do is use it as a email listserv, a listserv opportunity.
Yes, we could.
After the meeting is over, just a reminder and present the checklist for folks.
Thanks, Beth.
In that way. And then it'll be a broader sweep anyway.
That's a good idea. I will contact Carmen and see if we can get that going. Okay.
Thank you. I think that's a good solution. I look forward to seeing that, because a lot of catalogers, you know, it's just the cataloging reference manual is just so cumbersome. I don't know how we're going to get it done, but they're asking for some kind of tool, and I think a brief version, just a reference point, would be really helpful to catalogers. I hope Carmen can post that soon.
Okay. Sage Series Source Hierarchy. There's been a lot of conversation of late about Sage Series. As you noticed just a little bit ago when Anna was responding about the graphic novel and manga series topic. It's been about a year since we really addressed this area. We did do this in October of last year, talked about this, and you can go back and read the minutes from that. And then following that meeting, Lori O'Connor posted an email to the Sage Cat list, and she talked about series. And I just want to kind of read through a little bit of that just as a start to this conversation here. We want to keep things as consistent with series statements as possible, as Lori mentioned earlier, within the database. And as you all know, not all series are officially assigned clear series titles, nor do the authors or publishers always number their series. But our patrons, they love to have that information, especially in terms from their favorite authors. So we have been trying to make sure that we can give that information as best as we can, and we strive to do it in a logical group and order. Even when there isn't that available series authorities. So to try to improve our consistency within the system, Beth has been working on series authorities, and the mentors have been working as well with series and whatnot as well. But what we want to make sure is happening is that we're trying to do the best we can. So we've kind of laid out a few things that we hope will be helpful. So this is the list that Lori sent out. Always initially check the Sage catalog for other potential books from the same series and use the pre-existing series title and order based on the Sage records when applicable. Consider fantastic fiction as the default Sage guidelines for series information, including numeration. If you feel fantastic fiction is not correct in some cases or will not meet your needs as series split or add subseries, check multiple series sources before assigning a new series statement or series number. Do not remove any existing series statements or change the numbers without contacting the affected libraries, because there are some libraries in our system who shelve their books by series, either by the titles and or the numbers. So we don't want to make things very awkward and cumbersome for them as well. We all know what it's like when we have to do a lot of reorganizing because of shifting and changing call numbers and whatnot. So the 490 and the 8XX fields are repeatable. So when absolutely necessary, more than one series statement can be added to a record. Please, please be sure to add a 500 field revealing the source of your series title and numeration. If you've drawn this information outside of the publisher and authorized series statements, please be sure that you give that information. And if you're adding, say, another source, another numbering, you can add in that 500 field where those different numbers come from. So it's not uncommon that you'll find one numbering system in, say, Fantastic Fiction and another in Novelist or Goodreads. So if you can identify which ones those come from, it can be helpful. And wording matters. When you add an item, when you add a series statement, especially in your 8XX fields, minor variations on that series title can create some grouping issues and or adding extra in that filtering on the left-hand side of the records in the browse list. Sometimes you'll end up seeing some different variations. Well, it makes it difficult for the patrons to be able to figure out which one is the correct one they want to choose. So we want to try to keep things as uniform as possible. We are trying to use the system first, then Fantastic Fiction is the next place that we try to pull from, and this is because for many years we have referenced Fantastic Fiction to our patrons, and we have also listed it on our Sage website as, and on the catalog itself, as a link out. So we thought that would be the best place to be the next step. So it's kind of what that email talked about.
Dia, this
Yes.
is Catherine in Pendleton. I got a quick question. When we feel like we need to add a second 490 and 800, explain that we got it. Does the second line of those show for the patron, or does the original one still show?
I can answer this. In that initial browse display, only the first one will display, but when they get into the detail record, all of them will display.
So, Beth, you're saying after they choose the title on their
Correct.
screen, then they'll all show. Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Beth.
And hi, this is Anna. So just a follow-up question on that. Should we then be attentive to the order of, if we're using multiple 490, 800, should we be attentive to the order so that, for instance, the first one that is listed is the one found in the Sage Authorities, and then Fantastic Fiction, or I mean, those are probably going to be the same, but make sure that the first one is following that hierarchy, since that one's going to be the most visible to patrons.
That would probably be a good idea. So of course, the very first one would be whatever, if there's a numbering in the item.
Yeah, and the faceted display on the left-hand side will reflect both series entries as well.
Right.
I think if it becomes a big issue, we could look at displaying multiple series in the browse display, but we were concerned about lengthening the display and wanting to keep that somewhat brief but still offer enough information.
This is Lori, and I think that what Anna brought up is an important consideration. I would ask that catalogers respect the original or the authorized series. That should sit on the top and remain on the top. If you need to add an additional series after the fact, if something has changed, either in your source for series or in the way that you're shelving your books due to publisher series information or whatever, put that below the other series information and make the note of your source in a 500 note, please. I do have another question that's not quite the same thing, but it's in the series issue. Do we want to leave in Publisher series information, for instance, if it's an audio book, there's often a 490, audio editions or something note, audio Western series, or do we want to leave those in if it's just a publisher note and it has nothing really affecting our
You mean like
patrons?
Harlequin Romance or Thorndike Large Print or
Right.
those kinds of things? We've been saying for a long time that those are okay to leave in the 490, but you don't need to leave them traced in the 8XX field within our system. So they really don't do much good to anybody. You can even remove the 490 on those.
Leave the 490, but leave it untraced with the 0.
Yep, exactly.
Right. Well, a lot of the records are coming over, especially on the Z3950s, with both the 490 and the 830 fields. And so it does gum up our display at times.
Right.
So we are free to remove the 8XX field if it is not pertinent to our series.
Well,
tracing.
and I don't know that we even need the 490, even traced or untraced. Generally, most of those are so huge that most people are not going to be looking for unless it's a very specialized publisher. And oftentimes those are not done quite the same way anyway, because they're oftentimes associated either with a university or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Jenny, I'm not sure what you're saying. I thought we had said no. Maybe this was from earlier, a comment.
No, I think she's saying that not to put them in, not to keep them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm not very quick on watching the chat, so. Is that clearer than mud?
I think we want to be careful not to encourage too much stripping of any information in a
Absolutely.
bib unless you're certain as a cataloger that you understand whether it's beneficial or not, or whether it's something required. So don't get carried away with that.
Yes, please. If you have a question about it, feel free to contact a mentor or Beth.
Right. Right.
And soon John.
I've been stripping them for years. The publisher series stuff.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments, questions in reference to this particular topic? Okay, hearing none. The last thing that was added to the agenda is actually kind of along the lines of what Lori just said. We just want to put a reminder out there. You should not be removing fields at random or otherwise. Specific fields, like we were just talking about, the publisher series are okay to remove, but please don't be removing especially like subject headings and that kind of thing. And it doesn't matter if they're the BISAC headings or the FAST headings or Sears headings or any other headings, because there may be other libraries in the SAGE system that may be using those. We do have some special libraries. We do have a number of school libraries that may be utilizing a little different listing than some of what we have typically thought of in public libraries, and we do have some academic libraries. So, there are the MESH subject headings, the medical subject headings that you may find in records. They're ones that we should leave. If a record comes into the system with these additional headings, they may be valuable. And if we strip everything out that we don't think we need, if we find down the road that we do, we have to go back and enhance records. And that generally costs more money. So. Any additional questions or comments? Any additional comments or questions not related to anything we've talked about this morning? Wow, it is an incredibly quiet group today. Okay. In light of that, I want to make sure everybody's aware that the next cataloging committee meeting will be December 4th at 11 a.m. And like it's been in the past several months, it will be via GoToMeeting software. And I'm sorry, it should not say PDT, it should say PST, because by then we will be in standard time. So
I have just a general thing to throw out to the whole group of catalogers, and I wanted to know, do they often go to the SAGE webpage to look for cataloging tips or to get guidelines on information? Do they use that webpage very much? Do they know how to get into it? Are they comfortable with it? And to those of us, especially mentors, that try to improve the sharing of information, we need to discuss how to put in more of these suggested practices and keep that current. And also to go back and correct some of the older ones, because we have changed some procedure in there. And I personally am not real comfortable with making edits, or I don't know when I'm supposed to change something. So Beth and Dia, you could give me some guidelines at some point, but we do have some outdated information there. So are any of you catalogers using the SAGE webpage to find guidelines?
Well, I've gotten a couple of responses. So people are either doing it every day or occasionally. I'm thinking that we should review all of our cataloging tips and see if they are still relevant. If they are not relevant, we should change them. Get that up to speed first, and then look at some other posts that we could make to fill in the gaps.
So would it be helpful to find a way to post things, or like the email on series, picking series for SAGE, or how to avoid improper 245s? Do we think that's the right place to be posting those things?
I think we could use it as a valuable resource. I don't know that folks are going to search the archives of the email listserv. They're probably more apt to look for resources, static resources online. And so Jenny had a suggestion of email and then post, and I think that's a good idea. And I was thinking that we could use some of the content of the emails that have gone out to supplement the cataloging tips.
And whose responsibility would it be to post those cataloging tips? Like if I create an email, I like to give a time for Dia, Beth, anyone else to make comments and corrections, and then whose responsibility is it to post those? Do I have the power to post them? And should I? I don't know much about the Sage web.
Yeah,
I don't know
think
that I have authority to post.
I believe, Lori, since you have a separate login on the SageLib website, that you could certainly add a blog post if you wanted to. I think we just need to set up a procedure. If you're not comfortable with doing that, then we need to. John or I could add that for you. We just have to get that in the loop as far as a procedural thing.
Okay. I think there's 2 or 3, maybe 4 kind of cataloging tip things that have circulated in the last few months that we should discuss at the mentors meeting, or through a series of emails, and get those up, because I lose track of where to find the information I've actually shared sometimes. It's like I can't find my documentation.
Yeah, we all do. So it would be good to have that resource available.
And Beth, you mentioned something about searching the archives of the list. Is there a way to do that? Because I think that question was asked a while back, and I don't know that we ever really got a procedure to do that.
Yeah, we can.
So
we can document the procedure to search the listserv.
If you could do that, that would be really helpful.
Okay.
Because that would give whoever is working on this process someplace also to go gather some of this information to get posted as well.
Okay. Do you want me to send that out to everybody on the CAT listserv? Or just the mentors? Or what?
I think just the mentors for starting, and I can honestly say I barely can go through my archived list. So that'll be a large list, I believe. But I'd like to see it. I might be able to find the things I can't recall. I know some others have posted some cataloging tips in the last 6 months, and be darned if right now I remember exactly what they were about, but they were helpful.
Mm-hmm. So. John, you asked a question on the chat about a searchable online AACR2. I'm not sure if there still is that available, but it's through a subscription. We do not have a subscription to that, never have through Sage. So hopefully that answers that question.
It does.
Okay.
So, me being kind of an odd library type person, I actually have copies of the old AACR2s, and my now ex-wife got tired of me lugging them through the move, so I actually did the sacrilege and took them apart and scanned them.
Uh-huh.
Would that be something that someone might want to see a PDF of? I don't know how that would work as far as sharing it, because it's, technically a published item.
I was going to say that's probably going to go against all the things that we try not to do.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking, but I thought I would just...
Yeah, no, that's a good question, but yeah, I think we probably should try not
avoid
to do
that.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
sorry.
Most of the time, any questions we have are addressed through, freely available resources on the web, as far as OCLC, MARC, coding.
And those that aren't, there are still some copies of AACR2 around, which is what we're still cataloging standard-wise within Sage. And should we ever decide as a consortium to move over to RDA, then we will address, access to RDA rules at that point. So.
Yeah, and we've talked about Sage subscribing
Right.
getting a subscription to the RDA toolkit.
Right.
But we haven't done it because we're not
quite there
heavily
yet.
into RDA.
Yep.
Didn't want to pay for a subscription that we weren't
not really
utilizing.
utilizing. Okay, if there is nothing more for the good of the order.
One more thing, just another question to the general catalogers, if I may. Is there any special training, like just a 15, 20-minute thing? Is there any special part of using Evergreen that you are needing help with, or that you would like to see demonstrated, or you would like some hard copy circulated in the near future? Is there any particular function on Evergreen that you don't feel comfortable using? Woohoo, silent.
I was going to ask you if you're volunteering to do that, Lori.
No, I wasn't.
Well, yeah, it is silent now. If anybody thinks of something, please share it on the listserv, because we can get something put together between all of us. We don't want a need to be out there unmet.
Exactly. Okay, well, I would adjourn the meeting. Thank you for everyone's participation this morning, and I hope that you have a wonderful October.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks.